We have been in a series exploring the challenges that this year and the upcoming year are going to offer for the self-storage industry and what our company is doing to prepare for that and not only survive but thrive in the next upcoming year or so. We are on the fifth area that our company is really putting a lot of effort into. Let me share with you what that is. My name's Mark Helm, and I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Quick Start Academy. And what I do is I support the small investor who wants to get in the self-storage business or who wants to grow their self-storage business, strategically do so in a way that creates true wealth and a fulfilling career. And I put this number 5 area at the end for a particular reason. The last area is effective and cost-efficient operating expense management. Now, I put this last because very often this tends to be where a lot of people go, and they just start slashing expenses. And there's nothing wrong with reducing operating expenses, but I really encourage you to put a lot of effort in increasing revenue enhancement strategies where you can maximize revenue on even the same level of occupancy, as well as working on increasing occupancy. Because I've seen a lot of owners start slashing costs and cutting costs that they should be spending. So for example, in recessions, very often one of the first things to go is sales, marketing, because they, quote, can't afford it. Well, in a downturn economy, you should be putting more money into that. So I put this at the tail end, not because I think it's the least important, but I see self-storage owners tend to get in a lot of trouble with this. We've talked about over this series how operating expenses are going up, primarily in marketing and property taxes. But during this time, it's important to really be focused on not buying goods and services for your facility unless you got to have them, like utilities, or they're helping you rent units or keep customers. So let's go into detail about my suggestions on how to cut and create the most cost-efficient operating budget that there is. Operating expenses are going up, no doubt about it. The two culprits, like we said, property taxes, marketing expenses. Property taxes. I think when the property tax guys all get together, they talk about storage, because it doesn't matter where in the country our facilities are, we've noticed that property taxes are going up on all of them. Now, our standard procedure is we turn our tax bill over to a vendor to try to challenge any property tax increase. These vendors will tell us if we stand a chance and what they will need, usually like income, profit and loss statements, income statements, balance sheets, anything we've spent on the property. And they'll tell us if they think they can successfully challenge the new assessment. And if they can, we've had some mixed results with it, but usually the cost to us is based on performance. So we'll usually pay a percentage, let's say 50% of the tax savings for the first year will be the fee for these vendors. So they're incentivized to do well, and it supports us, and usually there's little or no expense if they're not successful. And I've had mixed results. Sometimes they've told me, no, I can't get it any lower. Other times they've told me they can, but they haven't. But mostly we get a reduction. I remember one case where we were said the new assessment came in at $5 million. We appealed it. It went down to $2 million. And the tax board appealed their own decision, and we ended up negotiating it to $3 million. So we've had some success with this, but I don't have a magic vendor you can use. We will typically use vendors, Google search, and use vendors who are familiar with and understand the nuances of the tax assessors for that particular area. Usually we'll have one for the entire state. So anytime you get a tax increase, I suggest that standard operating procedure. Now, those are going up. We can't control that. All we can do is control how we challenge them. And marketing expenses are going up. So in the old days, I can remember spending $50,000 a year on some facilities for Yellow Pages and marketing. Then, as the internet came online and as the recovery from the last recession began to happen, we didn't have to spend much on marketing. We had a website. We may do some pay-per-click, but pretty much all you had to do is turn the lights on and make it easy, be available, and people would find you and rent from you. And we got real spoiled on that let's say 12 or 13. That was the last time we used any Yellow Pages, up to maybe 2018. We got real spoiled because we had very low marketing expenses. Then as space started flooding the market and online advertising became a real art and science, we spend a lot of money today on marketing. So when we're looking at an stabilized facility, we'll still put in today $8,000 to $10,000 for marketing. If it's a lease-up situation, you could spend $20,000 easily. We typically will plug in $18,000 to $20,000 today for marketing, and it's primarily Google and Facebook. Why? Well, because if you've got 50%, 40% of new leases, customers finding you through online searches, you've got to be there. And it's just not cheap these days. So marketing is going up, especially if you're in a lease-up situation. If you're not showing up on Google and you're in my market area, continue that, because I'll show up and we'll get your customer base. But you've got to spend it. So those are areas where operating expenses are going up. I don't see income, other than some of the things we talked about in this series, going up, but I don't see a lot of price increases happening. So what that means is there's going to be some real downward pressure on the net operating incomes. Income minus operating expenses. So the rest of our operating budget really needs to be looked at carefully. Here's what we're doing. We're looking at every single line item on the P&L, and we're asking ourselves this question: can we stop it? Utilities? No, you can't stop utilities. But can we stop it? And if the answer is yes, if we stopped it, how would that affect our occupancy, our income, renting units, or keeping customers? So for example, dumpster. We don't have to have a dumpster. Now, if some facilities, we need a dumpster. If we don't have a dumpster, it would hurt us with keeping some tenants. But not every one of our facilities needs a dumpster. We've eliminated dumpsters in some of our facilities and just used trash, the municipal trash. There's nothing in our leases that say tenants have access to dumpsters. In fact, we try to get the tenants not to use the dumpsters. So that's an example of one area that we've really looked at. And if we cancel a dumpster contract, we can always put one back in. The next thing, after we go through all those line items, anyone that we're keeping and have a service contract with, we're going to go back and really see if we can renegotiate some of those contracts, like dumpsters, like alarm systems, like any service copier service contracts. Now, we're in a, quote, recession right now. So a lot of these vendors, it's not going to be a surprise to them that we're trying to ask them to sharpen their pencils. Many of them would be surprised if we don't. But any service contract you have, see what you can do to reduce that. I mean, we've even changed how we do our telephones. And payroll. Payroll is one of the larger line items, and we've had a particular philosophy on payroll. We tend to hire high-quality people, pay them well, keep them, and work on getting more productivity. Now, as technology comes along, we literally can have one employee go a lot further than they did 5-10 years ago. But how can we reduce payroll costs and still meet our business strategy? See, I used to equate expanding and scaling with more employees. But like Tony Robbins said, if you want different results, ask different questions. How can we scale? For example, here's a question. How can we scale and not hire new people? You know, we've learned a lot from using the kiosks and measuring, looking at when we're the busiest. And we've discovered, for example, in some facilities, the second and third Thursday of the week from 2 o'clock on, there's very little activity. In some of our facilities, on the days in the month where there's low activity, we'll send a manager home, let's say at 2. We've got a kiosk there and an answer service and someone live to support a customer if they need it. But that's an example of how we're reducing our payroll costs. Now, I was on a phone call today with someone, and this is not an exact metric, but we've got to use a metric of some type. We used to get about 5 years ago, we were getting about $300,000 of gross income per full-time employee. In the early 2000s, that was closer to $250,000. Today, we're around $350,000 of gross income per full-time employee. How can we get that to $400,000? What would that look like? So we're really looking hard at how we can impact that payroll number and still provide the same level or perhaps even enhanced level of customer satisfaction. That's important to us. We get around, on the low end, 20% of our new leases come from referrals from existing and past customers, up to like 35 or 40%. So having good customer service is not only nice, but for us, it's a big part of our business strategy. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be reducing payroll costs. So this year, nothing is sacred. No line item is sacred on that P&L. The closest we might have to sacred would, in my opinion, be the marketing. I'm sure my operations manager partner would have a different line item. They would say it was sacred. So we're saying nothing on no line item is sacred this year. We're looking at every single one of them, and we're asking different questions around it. My belief is that if we keep our eyes focused on these areas that we've been talking about over the past 5 weeks, we're positioning ourselves to really be able to take advantage of this downturn in the economy. Most fortunes are created not in the boom times, but in the down times. I was listening to an economist today talk about this. This is being recorded October of 2020. And That economist said our economy will get back to where it was January of 2020 in about 3 years. Now, economics is not an exact science, but we're positioning ourselves to really be strong during this downtime. It's easy to be good and effective when everything's booming and clicking on all cylinders. It's another thing to be strong, good, and expanding in a downturned economy. But you're in self-storage, so you know you can do it. So my coaching is focus on the areas that we've been talking about, really look hard, and get your company in a position to be very strong during this downturn economy and be able to weather whatever comes your way. Well, you can't control that, but you can control how you position your company in the marketplace today. Now, storage is going to do much better than most other asset classes, but there will be a number of storage operators who are not going to make it. Just don't you be one of them. We're not going to be one of them. And my coaching is you don't be either. Focus on these areas. Get yourself in a position to be strong and successful and be able to thrive in the upcoming year or so in this fantastic business of self-storage. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.